Welcome to Malpractice Podcast.
You got it?
Oh, are you ready to get started?
I'm very ready. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
Pretty good. My voice sounds hoarse because I went to a wedding and I yelled all night at everyone. I mean, like in a good way.
Like joyous yelling.
Like joyous yelling, like dance floor yelling.
Like, this is fun! Yeah.
Yeah. It was a really good wedding. I did definitely break my toe dancing.
Oh my God.
I just want to say, I can't be the only one. Am I the only one who has broken a bone at a wedding?
I mean, I have, to my knowledge, I've not.
Okay, I kept dancing, but what I think happened, what I'm fairly confident happened, is that one of the groomsmen stepped on my toe. Stomped. And it was like an Egyptian wedding, so there was lots of jumping. My calves are sore. My toe is broken. I have sustained wedding-related injuries.
You can send them a bill.
Yeah.
Send Stephanie a bill.
But congrats to friend of the podcast, Stephanie. She was a lovely bride, and it was a fantastic wedding.
No, she looked insane. She looked so
good.
good.
Yeah, she looked gorgeous. Yeah. And, okay, so at an Egyptian wedding, they do this part where they're Coptic, and they put a crown and like a cape on the head of the bride and groom. And it legitimately was the coolest thing. Like, it was so cool. I was so mad that I didn't have a crown on my wedding day.
Though you could have.
I texted Jessica and I was like, why did no one crown us? That's so rude.
So I couldn't even be bothered with a veil. I doubt I would have withstood a crown.
That's right. We got you a veil and then you were like, absolutely not. I'm not wearing that.
On the day of, I was like, I'll have none of that.
I was like, okay, whatever you want, if you're sure.
I'm like, damn, now I have this veil for no freaking reason.
Yeah, well.
Did your mom have a blasty blast?
Oh, yeah. So for the listeners, my husband was at his best friend's wedding, so also congrats to Eric and Nessa. When Stephanie, the bride, found out that Eric couldn't come to the wedding, she goes, oh my God, bring your mom.
As she should.
We left the wedding last night, and the first text I got this morning was, oh my God, your mom is an absolute legend.
Facts.
And I was like, you're not wrong.
Facts.
So she had a great time. Everyone loved her, as always. My mom is a party in a
She is the
box.
party.
She's
she
ready.
brought
Yeah.
the party, for sure.
She always brings the party. She was like, by the end of the night, she was like dancing with the mother of the bride. She was like sitting at the family table.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
Tracks.
Tracks with exactly what you would expect from my mom. Yeah.
Yeah. She was like the most fun at my wedding, so.
Oh, yeah. My mom had a blast at your wedding.
I like when she dances like this.
She was like so excited. She dances with her head. You can't see it, but Jess is like bobbling her. My mom has giant fro curls, and she shakes them backward and forward,
fun.
like side to side and backward and forward. Like she dances. Some people dance with their hips. Some people dance with their shoulders. She dances only with her hair.
And it looks so cool. She's so
Say I'm wrong.
Fun. No, you're never wrong. Never been wrong. We were with Michelle's family this weekend. A fun thing is that our niece we taught her how to play Uno.
Oh.
First of all, she's learning like matching, right, and numbers, so that's cool.
Yeah.
But then like for the wild cards or the reverse and the skip, I don't call them any of that. I'm like, these are all magic cards.
Oh.
And she'll pull one. She's like, I got a magic card. Like she lays all her cards out so everyone can see. Very excited. And then I'm like, okay, you can put a red card, you can put a 3. Or she's like, a magic card. I'm like, yep, or a magic card.
You're so good with kids.
It's so fun.
Okay, first of all, I asked my godson what he wanted to be when he grows up. Because the last time I talked to him, he had watched a documentary about horseshoe crabs.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And he was very into horseshoe crabs. And he was like, I think I want to be a marine biologist. And I was like, hell yeah, do that.
That's cool.
This time I called him and I was like, hey, bud, like, so what do you want to be when you grow up, And he goes, I think I want to be a YouTuber.
Aww.
I was like, what about...
Unless you're a YouTuber marine biologist.
Yeah, I was like, what about marine biology? What happened to that? And he was like, that dream is dead. Move on.
Did he say that?
That's
hilarious.
That's almost exactly what he said.
Oh my God.
He was like, this is what I want to be now. Support me.
Do you have any updates on Theranos?
Yes.
Okay.
I do have one Theranos update. It's not even really about the trial, but I saw this on my news, and because I follow Theranos intimately,
it's like we know
it
you
tells
like
me
this.
everything about Theranos. Correct. The new thing that's happening now is people are selling T-shirts and mugs and calendars that have Elizabeth Holmes' face on it with the hashtag girlboss. It's kind of messed up, but if you think about it,
it should say like Boss Babe. That's more accurate.
Boss Babe would be hilarious, but that's not what they went with. They went with Girl Boss.
I like Boss Babe. Rebrand.
Honestly, rebrand, because Boss Babe would be hilarious.
I would buy that.
That's the only real update I have. I'm sure other things are going on with the trial, but that's the funniest thing that happened to me this week.
Okay, perfect.
What if she wore one to court? That would make my life.
Oh my God.
Honestly.
Or her kid wore one.
Her new baby. Oh my God. A onesie.
Yeah. A onesie.
So
my
funny.
mom's a boss babe.
Hashtag boss babe. Do you want to get into it? Are you ready?
Yeah. So
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Today we're doing part 1 of my tobacco series, of which there are only 2 parts.
Yeah.
This is the one of 2. It's a 2-parter.
I love that.
We're going to start with the casual medical effects of tobacco. I'm not going to cover marijuana. Specifically, when I was in my research, it was a bunch of smoking, and then the history of smoking, and it would date back even further than tobacco goes, because people were smoking hallucinogens. And I think we should perhaps do the history of smoking that at some point, but that made this much longer than it needed to be. So we're just focusing on tobacco because the second part is a medical crime.
Okay.
That's focused on the tobacco industry. So that's why we're just focusing on the tobacco history and stuff today.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There is a lot. And I'm doing this because I saw this movie, and as I always do, I'm like, this can't be real. Psych is very real. So I did the research on that thing, and I'll bring that to us next time.
Cool.
So this here episode is the foundation for that.
Perfect.
So the Surgeon General's office has been releasing materials on the problems with smoking since 1964, which is a long time, kind of. It's before women could have their own credit cards. So there's that.
Woof.
That's how I make something a statistic that is effective.
Yeah, because that's disgusting.
That's stupid. But anyway, I'm going to break this episode down as follows. What happens to your body when you physically inhale tobacco products?
Love that.
What are the health risks? What could happen to you based on that? And then what is the history of smoking and using tobacco, i.e. where did all of this come from?
Okay. So what's your hot take on smoking? Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I would definitely say thumbs down.
Perfect. Okay.
And we're going to just a broad thumbs down. And I that's a great question too. I think as children, we're they're don't do drugs and don't smoke. But if they showed you the things I saw, if they showed you the graphics that I was looking at, there's no way you'd leave that assembly they're stupid. You'd leave that assembly I'm scared.
They started doing that on tobacco packets when they found they did this whole health campaign. They found that people are actually, to some extent, pretty motivated by fear.
Yeah.
So they started putting pictures of dead rats and black lungs on the cigarette packs. Now when you buy one, sometimes in Texas, they have a picture of blackened lungs.
And we'll get into why they do that too.
On a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay.
It's very interesting. And again, at some point, I'm going to go into that specific thing that happened, which we'll we'll get into like broadly talk about it today, but it's crazy.
Perfect. Okay.
So what happens when you actually smoke? So first I want to say, like, no matter how you ingest it, tobacco is like not great for your health. Okay. Like cigarettes contain about 600 ingredients, which are usually found in like cigars and hookahs too. So none of those are good for you.
Mm-hmm.
When those ingredients burn, they generate about 7,000 chemicals. That's right. Like you breathe in 7,000 chemicals at minimum into your body when you're inhaling those products.
Yeah. Okay.
Of those chemicals, 69 are scientifically linked to cancer directly.
Perfect.
Right. The most common are formaldehyde,
Perfect.
radioactive metals like lead, benzene, ammonia, TSNAS, yeah, tobacco-specific nitrosamines. I don't know why do I always do this where I'm like, I would like a scientific episode. Like,
you love it.
With these words. Arsenic, and then nicotine, which we're going to talk about, carbon monoxide,
okay,
cadmium, a lot more that I like.
Yeah.
These are the best of the scientific words that I could possibly say, right? So
love it, yeah.
I think I said formaldehyde, weird, but I can't even say it right now, that word. But those are not good chemicals to be ingesting into your body, period, point blank. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Feels like you don't want... Formaldehyde, if you don't know, like if you've ever taken a science lab, is what they fix dead tissues in.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for you, for sure. Okay, keep going.
Basically, that shit is all bad.
Yeah.
Although major tobacco companies gave out a list of the 599 additives it used in cigarettes in 1994, no list since then has been released. So surely it's more, surely it's worse.
That's concerning, for sure.
Yeah.
Like if they're not telling you, you gotta assume that it's worse than
that. If they're not telling you, it's not good, yeah.
Also, when you buy a cigarette, I feel like you think it's just tobacco.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely not. There's so much shit in there, yeah.
I did not know that. I mean, I kind of knew, but I didn't know this specifically.
I didn't know the quantity, like... Yeah. The amount of chemicals, and it's crazy because cigarette is small, right? In theory, I'm like, what could be in there? Turns out, like, everything bad for you could be in that one little thing. That one little thing.
People are like, I don't know what's in the vaccine. Do you know what's in your cigarettes?
Literally, I was like, oh my God, formaldehyde?
Don't get me started.
I literally was like, isn't that the shit that they put in dead bodies?
Correct, yes.
So I was like, that is, if it goes in you when you're dead, you probably don't want it in you when you're alive.
No.
I mean, just like a general...
Just like as a rule.
So you inhale, right, those chemicals. Right away, when you inhale, smoke is hitting the lining of your nose and esophagus, and it becomes red and irritated and uncomfortable from those chemicals. One of the key components of cigarette smoke is tar, which is a black, like sticky, resinous substance that's toxic. And when it enters your mouth, it coats your teeth and gums. Ugh. And that's why, like, sometimes people say you have, like, smoker's teeth or gums or whatever, and they, like, turn black. That's literally from, like, the buildup of that chemical.
Oh, wow.
The chemicals in tar. That smoke and tar travels through the respiratory system, so it doesn't just stop right here. I think that's the other thing is people are like, well, I'm just inhaling and blowing out. Like,
incorrect.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's already it's like traveling back through all of the respiratory system. The lining of your throat can actually become damaged. So smoke destroys the mucosal cells that are the back of your throat. This can be the cause of infections, dry mouth. So often smokers say they have dry mouth. It's because you're literally like blocking the mucus producing things at the back of your throat.
Wow.
And irritation. So the trachea, which is like our windpipe, is coated in cilia, which is like hair-like structures that clear the lungs and throat of anything foreign. So those are the things that probably get irritated if you have like a cough. They're trying to get whatever the infection is out.
Yeah.
Tobacco smoke actually stops it from doing that. It like paralyzes the cilia. So it can eventually like freeze them and they won't work anymore.
Wow.
Because it's like so constantly being paralyzed.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? So people think that smoking actually can be a cure for smoker's cough. So if they're coughing and they inhale a cigarette, then they're like, oh, I stopped coughing. Well, it's because you're paralyzing those things that are like trying to clear your throat.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
That's honestly, first of all, I knew about the cilia and the trachea, and I knew about the damaging of the mucosal cells. I did not know they were basically paralyzing the cilia, because it's like if you inhale a dust particle, it becomes, the cilia cause like they basically trap the dust particle. They keep it from going down your lungs, right?
Yeah, and then you cough it.
And then you cough it out. Yeah. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because not only are you, and the fact that it stops with more smoking and people are like, oh, well, I fixed it with more. Despite the fact that I right now, with my raspy voice, I sound like a 95-year-old smoker.
Yeah.
That is terrifying.
It's crazy. Basically, smoking stops the self-cleaning process of your lungs or your trachea and like the back of your throat. So it's really bad because then anything can happen. That's why people get infections while they're smoking or like more prone to infections because the natural reaction of your body to protect itself isn't there.
It's completely disabled. Yeah.
I imagine these little hairs being like, oh my God, I want to grab it, but I can't.
That's so sad.
Now that I characterize them as little hairs that are like, I just want to help you.
Now that you anthropomorphize the hairs, I feel sorry for them.
Because I'm not a scientist, I'm like, what do these things mean? So every time I see a science word, I'm like, okay, well, I have to Google this word. So then I saw little pictures of them. I'm like, they're just little babies like this.
Little baby hairs. Your cells kind of grow out these projections like anywhere that you basically want a passage potentially to be blocked from something like the inside of your nose has them. All the way down your trachea. Basically, anytime like particulate matter could come into an orifice, you want it to stop.
Science is the only subject I never taught, literally. I can do that.
I'm not doing that. I can't say science words.
Carbon monoxide is absorbed into the bloodstream like almost immediately. It binds with hemoglobin.
Wow.
I read that hemoglobin when I was reading, and I was like, hemoglobin? What? What October mess is this? And it takes actually the place of oxygen.
Yeah.
And that's scary. So the cell proceeds to do what cells do and circulate through the body. Me teaching.
Yeah.
Cells are doing their celly thing in the body, right? This can leave someone like out of breath in the short term, but can also lead to damage in the long term to your heart, right? As it's damaging arteries, causing aneurysms. I don't know what that word is, and heart disease.
The word that it's atherosclerosis. It's like a hardening of your veins and arteries. Block-ups, basically.
Because the blood that has like no longer oxygen with it is circulating and causing like you to be out of breath, and so you're like freaking out. It's because you're not circulating oxygenated blood through your system anymore.
Right. So your body can't get the oxygen it needs.
Yeah.
And so it tells your body to like breathe in more, basically.
Yes.
Interesting.
And so sometimes people think like smokers, they're just out of shape.
Yeah.
But it's actually because you don't have oxygenated blood.
Yeah. You're like decreasing your lung capacity, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, your oxygen capacity.
Honestly,
sorry,
I would agree with anything you said. One of the ingredients pretty much everyone has heard of is nicotine, right? Which enters your blood. It's a mood-altering drug, which means that when it reaches your brain, it makes you feel energized for a while. It makes you feel good. You're like, I need this. You feel relaxed. You can feel focused too. But when they started adding it specifically to like products, people were like, I'm focused. I can do my job. And they were like, it's killing you. But like, anyway, you know?
Yeah. But anyway.
It's addictive, though. So when it wears off, you crave more of it.
Yeah.
When you inhale a cigarette, well, not the cigarette, but the smoke from the cigarette. When you inhale those chemicals, nicotine is almost like seconds away from reaction. So it's like very fast and it's very gratifying.
Yeah.
It's also been attributed to like weight loss because it suppresses appetite. So there's like all of these articles about how people who stop smoking gain weight and get depressed and start smoking again. It's like this endless cycle. And it's because nicotine is like suppressing their appetite.
Wow.
If you stop, like this is the other thing about nicotine. If you stop smoking, like you want to stop, it can actually lead to temporary congestion and respiratory discomfort because your lungs are actually healing from like you have put it through and like all of the chemicals. So it's like really hard to quit. And because your body really relies on that nicotine to give it adrenaline and to like help it feel like it's functioning.
Oh, wow.
So if you stop it, it's like real withdrawal from these products because your body then craves that to keep it going.
The thing that it makes me think of is like when we talked about the opioid episode, I talked a little bit about like the science of addiction and dependence.
Yeah.
And it's really terrifying, especially like when you were talking about So the pleasure center of your brain is activated with like eating food, right?
Same.
It's also probably activated by nicotine. So when you are replacing food with nicotine, your brain is like, I feel good. We've had enough.
Yep. And so it says
that's scary.
It's super scary. And I was reading a couple articles on when you decide to stop smoking, you have to replace that with something else. So people chew gum aggressively because they're like, I have to be doing something. Like, I have to give
sunflower
my
seeds.
Body something. Yep. Something to like do physically.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Addiction's
like an oral
crazy.
fixation.
Yep. Yeah. So 46 million people, or about 20% of the population, still smoke in the U.S. today.
20%?
That's a lot. Yeah.
No way.
According to articles.
Does that include like vaping?
It could. I don't know. It just said smoking.
Okay. Wow.
But vaping is also bad for you.
Yeah, right.
So don't think you're getting out of this, vapors.
We get it. You vape.
Oh, them. Yeah. There are over 480,000 deaths a year attributed to smoking.
That's shocking.
That's nearly like 1 in 5 of the deaths. Smoking causes more deaths every year than HIV, illegal drug use, alcohol use, motor vehicle injuries, and firearm-related incidents combined.
What? Oh my God.
Because smoking affects your whole body.
What? Okay, I want to know, what is it? I mean, you talked about like kind of preliminarily, but like, what does it do? What does it cause?
So what happens is the chemicals, especially those cancerous connected chemicals, they are like circulated through your body. And that's why you can have cancer in so many different areas that they can attribute to smoking. So, for example, your bladder, your blood, your cervix, your colon, your rectum, your esophagus, your kidneys, your larynx, your liver, your oropharynx, your pancreas, your stomach, your trachea, bronchus, lung, I think I said pancreas again, and your mouth. All of those areas of your body, those organs and those areas of your body can have cancer that is attributed to smoking because of how the chemicals reacts in those organs.
That's crazy. Honestly, double up on pancreas. I'm fine with it because it's one of the hardest to catch. Yes. And so it's one of the most deadly types of cancer.
Yeah, so I was reading about specifically pancreatic cancer because it's so, if you get pancreatic cancer, like it's so, you're very hard to survive.
Yeah.
And I will put you can see, Sydney can see this graphic that I found from the CDC. So I'll put that on our story whenever we are putting out this episode, because it literally has like all of these areas in your body, like basically it's everything. It's literally everything. Yep.
I mean, it makes sense, but you're just inhaling chemicals wholesale and you're like, I don't know, I guess we'll see.
So obviously when we talk about smoking, people are going to be focused on the lungs, and smoking can cause people to be at high risk for chronic irreversible lung conditions outside of cancer, like emphysema. This destroys like the air sacs on your lungs,
bronchitis,
inflammation of the breathing tubes in your lungs, and COPD. It's like a group of lung diseases. So basically, yes, right, you can get lung cancer. I think that's the fixation that people have, especially explaining to children and young people. Like, if you smoke, you're going to get lung cancer. Bitch, if you smoke, you can get any kind of cancer. Like, you can pull out of a bag, spin the wheel. You can literally kill yourself in a way that you wouldn't even think is connected to your addictive habit of smoking. It should not. Basically, I'm just pleading with educators or people, healthcare professionals, stop telling kids it's only lung cancer, because if they're smoking and their lungs are fine, then they're like, I'm good. Meanwhile, they could have cancer in their bladder from smoking.
Yeah. And not even think about it, not even get checked for it.
Yeah.
And the thing I think is important about bringing this up specifically, this is a really good point that you just made, because the more you know that you can get those things, when you're a smoker and you have symptoms associated with one of these other things, you're not just thinking like, oh, well, it's not my lungs, so it can't be cancer or it can't be associated with smoking.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Also, you said spin the cancer wheel, and that sounds like, not to be insensitive, the worst game show in the entire world.
Well, I'm like, so the reason I was thinking about this when I was writing, and every time I go, for like any doctor at all, not just me, like anybody, right? They're not just like, oh, Jessica's coming, better ask her if she's a smoker. No, any doctor, when I went to the orthopedic specialist, they were like, are you a smoker? And the reason they asked that is because any injury internally could be attributed to smoking. And if you are a smoker, they need to screen for cancer in that area.
That's another really good reason to not lie to your doctor, because people do that all the time.
Yeah. And don't, because like it says, who does that help?
Yeah, right.
Who? The doctor does not care. They just need to know.
Yeah, they need to know for medical reasons. Friend of the podcast, Eric Pittman, says he will have people come in who are very clearly high as a kite. And he's like, do you use drugs? And they're like, no. And he's like, meth counts as a drug. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, then I do meth.
Oh my God. Yikes.
So tell your doctors.
Yikes.
Especially if you smoke.
Yeah. Just be honest. And like, that's the other thing. If you're going into the doctor and you smoke, you just need to say, hey, I smoke, so that they know that they need to screen for more things to help you. Right. It's also just protect yourself.
Sure.
So the entire cardiovascular system can also be affected by the chemicals that you inhale with tobacco, nicotine, smoking, etc. Nicotine actually causes blood vessels to tighten, which can stop blood from actually flowing. Over time, you can imagine that the narrowing of blood vessels...
Stopping your blood from flowing is terrifying, because you need that for everything.
Yeah. It can obviously, that does not sound like something that is good. It can affect a person's health in other ways, like it raises your blood pressure, blood clots, and risk of stroke. Smoking also triggers a risk of worries. I almost said worrisome. Like, yeah, it is. But worsening heart disease.
Which is worrisome.
Specifically, which is worrisome, if you have already had some sort of heart-related issue or surgery. So, if you have had a heart-related surgery, and you smoke tobacco products, or you chew, or you dip, or any tobacco-related thing because you're not in the clear, you need to tell your doctor when you go in for your checkups, because they need to super check your heart. Yeah.
Also, can I just say one thing? Maybe if you've had heart disease, don't smoke.
Yeah.
Or do any of the other... Yeah, I think this is the other thing, too, is that they really hit hard on smoking, which, yes, do that. But also, we're from East Texas. I know lots of people who dip, like starting in high school, who like chew, put a pinch of chewing tobacco in their lip. And that is a whole recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Any tobacco products. If you're like, well, I don't smoke, but you vape, I'm talking to you. If you're like, well, I don't smoke, but I dip, I'm definitely talking to you, because that shit is disgusting.
It's disgusting, yeah.
If it says tobacco on it, I'm talking directly to your face. and I'm appealing to your bank account, because I know that shit is expensive.
Full disclosure, my dad is still a smoker. This is not a direct targeted effort to get my dad to stop smoking, but I would not be mad if it did.
And I'm doing it. I'm like,
subliminally.
Don't.
So I told my dad one time, I was like, yeah, so at $5 a pack, smoking is really a huge drain. And I saw the statistic that said something to the effect of like, oh, if you smoke for 30 years, you could have bought a Lamborghini if you have like a pack a day. And he's like, well, you don't smoke. Where's your Lamborghini?
That's funny.
Is that funny? I was like,
with the zinger.
Boy, you were ready for that one, weren't you?
Yeah. I think he's always ready. He's like, I already opened my can this morning.
Correct. Should we explain that? Opening up a can?
So Sydney's dad would always say, like, he's going to open up a can of whoop ass on someone, or like
someone.
Whoever needed a can of whoop ass to be opened on them. And then when we were younger, he would tell me to open up a can of whoop ass on somebody else, or Sydney.
When we played soccer together, he would like yell from the sideline.
And then I would tear someone's ACL.
Correct.
Smoking can cause other shit too, obviously. So nicotine actually affects your blood flow, which I think I just kind of described before we went on our tangent about opening up a can, all the way to the genital area. So it can lead to sexual dissatisfaction and a decrease of lubrication. So take that for what it is. If you like to have pleasurable sexual intercourse.
Yeah. I feel like if nothing else, you should take from this, your wiener will stop working.
It could. I mean,
I feel like for some listeners, I'm going to guess that is a very important thing.
I don't know. I literally could not relate less to anything you just said. But if that's what gets you to stop smoking, here. It can make it harder for a woman to become pregnant. It can, of course, affect a baby's health before and even after the birth. So even if you stop smoking while you're pregnant and then you start smoking after you give birth and you're like, whatever, using, what's it called, formula instead of breast milk or whatever, the smoke that you are letting out of your body has the same chemicals as the smoke you're inhaling. That's why people can get second-degree smoke is like still really bad for everyone involved.
Wow, yeah.
On the topic of birth and smoking, it can increase the risk for early delivery, stillbirth, low birth weight, sudden infant death syndrome, which is like probably the most terrifying thing in the world.
Literally the most terrifying thing.
Literally. Or facial clefts in infants.
Wow.
And it can actually reduce fertility in men's sperm as well. So just because you don't give birth doesn't mean your fertility won't be affected.
Yeah.
It has effects on bone health. It can affect the health of teeth and gums, like I said at the beginning. It can cause tooth loss. Smoking can increase risk for cataracts. Who the fuck? Cataracts, I know that word.
Yeah.
And is also a cause of type 2 diabetes.
Wow, no way.
Yep. Smoking increases the risk for the following: coronary heart disease by 2 to 4 times.
Yeah.
For a stroke by 2 to 4 times. Of men developing lung cancer by 25 times.
Oof.
Of women developing lung cancer, 25.7 times. I don't know why we are a little bit higher. That's disrespectful.
It's rude.
But that is what I know about that medical effects.
That's a lot.
Dude,
like
everything that could be bad.
It's all bad.
And you smoke, it's like extra possible that it happens.
This is all bad. It's all bad. Just maybe don't do it.
Yeah. No, it's so... I literally could have said this.
Yeah.
I could have written the script like this. Tobacco is bad. Smoking is bad. It's all bad.
Yeah.
And that could have been the whole
If this episode is too long, let's condense it down to smoking is bad and everything will kill you.
Literally, and that was all the medical, sciencey stuff.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to get into the history of tobacco.
Ooh, fun. Okay.
So, here we go. Tobacco is derived from the leaves of a plant from the nightshade family, which is like probably the coolest name of a plant family.
It is, but I also think they're usually toxic.
Yeah, no, for sure it's tobacco.
Potatoes?
So.
Are
Cool
potatoes
name.
nightshades? Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know why you'd ever think that I would know the answer to that question.
Okay, full disclosure. Pretend I'm like whispering behind my hand to our listeners. I don't know shit about plants.
Full disclosure, my dad is a fire ecologist and a forestry professor.
He would know.
And I also don't know shit about plants.
Yeah, I know that I should water my like ferns.
Okay, but you are a plant mom. You have like you have a garden.
Oh, you're right. I do have a garden, but I don't know what a nightshade is.
Vegetables.
I'm making that up.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
It dates back tobacco use literally to 5,000 before Christ BC. That is like including the smoking of medicinal herbs, like if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
They were smoking all sorts of things. Again, I'm not getting into that. Mayan people of Central America used the leaves of tobacco for smoking in certain ceremonies or religious events. And the process and practice then spreads like along the Mississippi Valley when the community migrated and spread along other tribes and cultures as they like had treaties or as they were fighting and someone saw what they were doing, right? So they spread this idea, the Mayan culture, through the Americas.
Yeah, interesting.
Tobacco cultivation probably began at that like 5,000 BC alongside the development of maize-based agriculture in central Mexico. So they were harvesting tobacco before that, and then they were like, oh, we should grow it, produce it, because everybody likes this shit.
Agricultural revolution, yeah.
Yeah. But tobacco had been growing wild in the Americas for like 8,000 years.
Wow.
And then like 2,000 years ago, tobacco started being chewed. So they would like smoke it, they like pound it, they would like put it in basically cigars or in pipes, and then they would also chew it. In the eastern North American tribes, tobacco was carried in pouches, readily available for trade because it was like money.
Wow.
People would trade with tobacco leaves.
Yeah.
And as well as like it was like at the ready for pipe ceremonies or like treaty ceremonies. So they were like, I got it.
Yeah.
Like I'm ready. It literally in little pouches in front of them.
Like a peace pipe, right?
Literally, yes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
There were some indigenous people in California who have used tobacco as one ingredient in smoking mixtures for treating colds. And it's probably because it froze your little cilia, little thingy things in the back, and then you were no longer coughing. Usually it was mixed with the leaves of small desert sage or like the root of Indian balsam or cough root. So they would mix it with other things and smoke it, and then it was like a remedy for a lot of illnesses.
Interesting.
It was used for other medical in early periods for other medical purposes as well. In fact, it was used as a cure for dressing wounds, reducing pain, and toothaches, which is crazy. Which, knowing what we know now, it sounds so crazy. Like, oh, my tooth hurts. I need to smoke a little tobacco.
Yeah.
But remember, this was before all the additive chemicals, too. So, like, I don't, you know.
It was just tobacco.
I mean, I'm sure it was still not great for you.
Sure.
But at that time, they were using it because they were like, this stopped my toothache. You use it.
Yeah.
In addition, it was used for asthma.
Feels like it would make asthma worse, but...
Right.
Yeah.
Earaches, bowel problems, fever, sore eyes. Don't know what that is. A depression.
Makes you happy, sure.
Insect bites, burns, really almost like anything. They're like, just smoke a little tobacco. You'll be okay.
That's so interesting. And I'm going to guess scientifically that the reason for a lot of this is that tobacco is a vasoconstrictor, right? So it constricts your blood vessels, so it decreases your body's ability to produce like an immune response.
Yeah.
It's like the nuclear approach, you know? So
Native indigenous people are minding their own business. As we know, Christopher Columbus
is a schmuck.
Is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I found a source that had the audacity to say that Christopher Columbus discovered tobacco.
Did he time travel 8,000 years ago?
But he didn't discover shit.
Yeah. I think we're all on the same page about Christopher Columbus, right? Fuck that guy.
I hate him.
Cool. Perfect.
He was actually given tobacco as a gift from native people and taught how to use it. And then about, October 12th, 1492, when he sailed the ocean blue, right?
Yeah.
And they gave him some tobacco as a gift because it was like a precious thing.
Number one, can you imagine if someone handed you a scarf for Christmas and gave you a scarf as a gift and you were like, I discovered scarves.
I can. That's some white man
That's
energy
what you're doing.
Right there.
Some strong white man energy.
He then took that knowledge back, right, to Europe. And basically this consumption, cultivation, and trading of it kind of develops in Europe. There are two people, Rodrigo de Jerez and Luis de Torres. And those are the first seen sailors who were seen smoking in Europe. And people were so freaking scared when they were blowing smoke out of their mouths. Like Jerez's neighbors had him arrested by the Holy Inquisition, and he was held captive for over 5 years because they're like, that bitch is the devil. He's smoking out of his mouth.
Oh my God.
I'm so freaking scared. So that's what he gets.
That's crazy, number one.
They were like, that's some demonic shit. Get him out of our neighborhood.
That man is smoking, and I guarantee you he's the devil.
He is the devil incarnate.
And the Inquisition was like, yes, I agree.
They were like, he hasn't done it since, but he gotta go. He's
like,
scaring all these bitches out here.
We love keeping people in captivity. That's our whole jam.
But literally, they were like, I think it was 7 years that he was in prison.
Can you imagine? He's like, I just thought it was cool. I thought I looked cool.
Anyway, I don't know if I'm adding him for no reason.
I mean, falsely imprisoned for 7 years is not cool.
All for a little puff of tobacco. So tobacco eventually becomes one of the primary products that fueled colonization of the New World, right?
Yeah.
And it was a driving factor for actually the introduction of African slave labor. So it was actually one of the reasons that the slave trade was so a focal point of colonization, because tobacco is a labor-intensive crop. It requires cultivation, harvesting, and curing, and all of these processes are something that white people didn't want to do at the time. And indentured servitude was not meeting the needs of the capitalist society they were building in the colonies. Tobacco also broke down fields and made food crops more productive because it took nutrients out of the soil, as some of the products needed a less rich environment to grow. So in the South, the soil was super rich, and like what they brought to plant and to like cultivate was not taking to the soil because it was used to like the European soil, which I guess is not as rich. So tobacco, if you started growing tobacco, it would like basically be like fuck your soil up, and then things could grow there.
Wow.
Yeah, they would eventually develop tobacco barns and other methods to make production of the product faster, but like at what cost? So it was like they would take tobacco, put it in strips, they would have to dry it, and then that's what they eventually used the barns for. So it'd be like strips and strips and strips and strips and strips of it, and then you have to like take them off and whatever you want to do with it, if you want to like crush it or if you put it in another product. But all of that, they obviously would prefer not to do it themselves. And so by 1531, so we're going a little bit backwards, it was being cultivated in Europe for the first time. The Japanese were actually introduced to the plant by the Portuguese in like 1542, and it was spread into the Ottoman Empire after that. In 1559, a French ambassador in Lisbon sent samples to Paris of tobacco. That same ambassador sent leaves and seeds to the King of France with instructions on how to use tobacco as like snuff. So the king actually cured his headaches this way. Like he had like chronic headaches. He also only lived like 18 years at that time, but anyway, he like solved his chronic headaches at the time for like a couple years because of tobacco is what he like said, this cured me.
Okay, you probably could have tried something else, but what do I know? Did you ask anyone, or did you just start chewing tobacco? Did you talk to a doctor first?
Well, I wouldn't trust a 1559 doctor.
As you should not.
I would not.
They were like, headaches, what if we drill a hole in your head?
Literally. I also wouldn't trust an envelope with some like seeds either. So
no, I'd be like, you're sketchy. This is some Jack and the Beanstalk bullshit.
That I am not a part of. By the 1600s, it was like all over Europe and England and was actually being used like as a monetary standard. And then in the 1700s, it was widespread like everywhere. It was considered a magical healing tool, and the modernization of farming obviously sped this up as well, with equipment and manufacturing increasing the availability and the quantity of the products, specifically cigarettes.
Yeah, heroin was also considered healing at one point, so don't get too excited.
Yeah. Smoking form of tobacco was introduced in South Asian countries in hookah. So I wanted to like make mention that everyone had tobacco right at this point, and now certain areas and cultures are dealing with it or using it differently. So in South Asian countries, they were using hookah, chilam, which is like a clay pipe, and rolled tobacco in the form of bidis is what it's called. The non-smoking form as well, we discussed like inhalation of roasted and finely powdered mixtures of raw tobacco, and they would put lime with it so you could like inhale it. And other types of tobacco mixtures that fit the cultural space. For example, in Indonesia, tobacco is mixed with cloves and dipped into the oral cavity, just like regular dip. Yeah. But it was like spiced. So spiced dip.
That's so interesting. I went to a Pakistani wedding once, and they have this tobacco that's like a powdered tobacco that's like sweetened, and they roll it in a leaf and you put it in your cheek and dip it, and it gives you like a buzz. So instead of alcohol, they do that, and it was like only dudes, and I got in line because I was like, I want to try.
Did you like it?
And it was me and like 50 dudes in line. No, I hated it. I was like, oh, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, love
now
that.
I never have to try tobacco again.
No, or dip. In 1602, there was an English essay published about illnesses caused by chimney sweepers. Well, wait.
Start that one over.
The illnesses that were occurring with chimney sweepers. I doubt the chimney sweepers. I don't think I'm okay if you leave it in here. I don't think that I'm not going to say the chimney sweepers were causing this. I think what I meant to say was that the chimney sweepers were getting a lot of illnesses that were caused by soot, and it hypothesized in this essay that tobacco would be doing something similar. This was in 1602.
Hey, smoke feels like it's bad for you.
These chimney sweepers are getting sick.
Yeah.
They around
in 1602.
Smoke.
Perfect.
They around smoke. We inhale smoke. Could be bad. Feels bad. I thought that was cool.
It is cool.
In 1632, Massachusetts passed a state law saying smoking in public was illegal.
Oh, wow.
I don't know why they did that. I doubt it was because they believed in
Probably
science.
because everybody was smoking.
But I bet they were like, this is disgusting. And it was like a Puritan society, right?
Have you ever seen those old airplanes from the 80s that had like ashtrays on the airplane? Can you imagine living in like the 80s when everybody just smoked everywhere? It would be disgusting.
Super disgusting.
If I were Massachusetts, I'd be like, yeah, don't do that. I hate it.
But in 1632, that's crazy.
That's wild, yeah.
That's actually the earliest recorded legislation regarding smoking.
Wow.
So that's kind of cool. In 1760, Pierre Lorillard, right?
That's a terrible name. I don't know.
Started the first company that processed tobacco to make cigars and snuff. It is today the oldest tobacco company in U.S. history.
Mm-hmm.
The more popular the substance got, the more scientists started studying it. So in the Revolutionary War, Americans used tobacco as collateral for the loans they got from France. So they were literally like, it was becoming the most popular thing. And this is when people are like, well, this is probably not great. Even back then, right? They were like, I feel like people might be dying more.
Yeah.
Then they already be dying because it's a long time ago.
Revolutionary Americans were like, listen, France, we don't have money.
We have cigars.
What if we gave you this thing that kills you?
Literally. In 1795, Samuel Thomas von Summering of Maine in Germany reported that he was being made aware that there were cancers of the lip in pipe smokers. In 1798, the U.S. physician Benjamin Rush wrote about the medical dangers of tobacco.
Cool.
Of course, we still have a lot of history to go before anyone gives a fuck. It wasn't until the 19th century that cigarettes were made and sold as major tobacco products in the U.S. And then, in 1901, 3.5 billion cigarettes were sold in the U.S.
Oh.
And more tobacco companies were created. Prior to that, tobacco was used in pipes, cigars, chewing, and snuff. During the Civil War, cigarettes were pretty popular, and in 1864, there was a federal tax put on them. So the government was like, I would like some money, please.
Mm-hmm.
In the UK in 1847, Philip Morris was established, and they were the first to start selling hand-rolled Turkish cigarettes, but they soon had competitors.
Sure.
So shit is popping up, shit is popping off.
Love it.
There were cigarette making machines in the 1800s, and those machines produced like 200 cigarettes every minute. Today, those machines produce like 9,000 per minute.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Right? In the 1920s, the first medical report linked tobacco to lung cancer, and reports like that started to appear. But many newspapers refused to report on those findings because tobacco companies advertised heavily in newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Big yikes.
Not a surprise.
In that time period, the popularity of smoking also grew. So the reports are coming out, like, this shit is not good. They're like, I'm not going to write about that. That's not my business. And then people, because they're not reporting on it, they're probably just putting in advertisements, right, in replace of what could be reports.
Wow, yeah.
And people are just buying more of these products.
Because they're like, I love money. What do you want?
Smoking actually grew in popularity during war times as well, because the government would provide cigarettes for free as like morale boosters for troops.
Wow.
So during World War I, Army surgeons praised cigarettes for helping the wounded in pain.
Yeah, okay, if you get shot in the leg, I guess I don't care if you smoke a cigarette, but on a daily basis, like, are you being shot in the leg? No, you're fine. Don't smoke.
What country...
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. What country or government do you think put out the first modern anti-smoking campaign?
Canada.
Nazi Germany.
Oh, cool. Love that.
Yeah, I knew you would never get it. The National Socialist government condemned tobacco use in Nazi Germany, and it actually funded research against it. Because remember, all of those doctors that we talked about were like Nazis. They're also like scientists, so they were really brilliant psychopaths. And they were like putting out all this research about smoking.
I hope they all died of lung cancer.
I hope they did too. I hope they accidentally ingested lung cancer.
Hot take,
themselves.
Fuck Nazis.
Yeah. Facts.
Wow. Really coming out strong.
I mean, I support that statement 100%.
I feel like that's one thing we can all agree on.
Yeah. Finally, in the 50s and 60s, medical reports were put out that confirmed tobacco caused a range of serious diseases, including cancer. In 1962, the Royal College of Physicians report said that smoking had a causative relationship with cancer. So everyone's like, yeah, this is not great. In 1972, the Surgeon General report said that environmental tobacco smoke was a health risk to non-smokers as well.
Like secondhand smoke, yeah.
In 1970,
they're like, yeah, don't smoke around your kids either.
They're like, don't put this around anybody else. In 1973, Arizona restricted smoking in public spaces due to the ETS we just mentioned.
Wow.
So the federal government began regulating smoking within government spaces. In 1975, the Army and the Navy stopped including cigarettes in rations for service members, which is crazy because that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
And in 1979, smoking was restricted in all federal government facilities and was banned in the White House in 1993. Right before that, in 1988, they finally banned smoking on domestic commercial flights for 2 hours or less. Like you had said, it was actually not until 1988. And then they extended that in 1990 to all commercial U.S. flights. They were like, yeah, you just can't be fucking smoking anymore.
That's the year before I was born. They were like, hey, stop smoking. We've known that this is bad since the 1600s, but here's the thing. We like doing it. Thing.
We like it. You can't do it here.
One quick point. Why would you bring a lighter or any type of combustible onto a plane? Let's be clear, planes are magic. They're witchcraft.
Yeah, no, agreed.
I have no idea how planes work.
I have never agreed with anything more that you have said in my life. I literally am like, how the fuck are we not falling to our deaths?
Right.
I literally cannot understand.
So you're saying it's made of metal. Okay, cool. And I'm going to get in it and fly through the sky. Perfect.
And we're going to go in
Love
the
that.
air. Yeah.
But then to get in that magic skybox and be like, I think I'll have a cigarette. It's like,
I think I'll have 15.
You're really taking your life into your own hands.
And everybody else's life.
Everyone's. I hate it. Keep going.
In 1985, lung cancer became the #1 cause of death in women. At that time, lung cancer was higher than breast cancer in statistics.
Wow.
In 1994, Mississippi became the first state to sue the tobacco industry to recover the Medicaid costs for tobacco-related illnesses, and they settled in 1997. Remember that for next week.
Perfect.
A total of 46 freaking states eventually filed similar suits. 3 others settled with the industry, which is Florida, Texas, and Minnesota.
Okay.
In 1998, the tobacco industry approved a 46-state master settlement agreement, which totaled about $206 billion.
Oof.
That would be paid through the year 2025. So this is like actively happening.
Yeah.
The settlement, on top of that money, would include a number of public health provisions. As part of that major service or master service agreement, the major U.S. tobacco companies agreed to remove all advertising from outdoor and transit billboards around the U.S.
Wow.
The rest of that, the 3,000 billboard leases, which were valued at like $100 million, were to be turned over to the states for posting anti-tobacco messages.
Oh,
so
wow.
the tobacco companies have to pay, as you said, for those like anti-tobacco messages being put out, like public service announcement.
Yeah. Hey, as a reminder, our product kills you.
Yeah, literally. Strangely, in 2000, the U.S. Supreme Court affirmed a 1998 choice of the U.S. Court of Appeals and ruled that the FDA did not have the jurisdiction to regulate tobacco products, and they can't propose rules to reduce access and the appeal of tobacco products for young people.
Okay.
And the FDA is now trying to regulate, and I think they have some regulations, but they wanted to specifically say you cannot target young people.
For smoking ads.
And the U.S. Supreme Court said, you can't.
You can't restrict that.
This is my foundational episode for next week's episode.
Love that.
I'm sorry I jumped around in the timeline. I definitely know in the 1980s and 90s, I don't know what the fuck the timeline was. I was bebopping around, jumping here, jumping there, but you get the facts.
It feels like the 80s and 90s were like, why don't you just live your best life and we'll see how it goes?
Literally, that's how I feel until, what is this year? 2021.
Correct, yeah.
So next week, we got a little medical crimey episode.
You know I love a medical crime.
So I'm very excited about the tobacco industry. So I'm really into that. But this is what I know about
This is so interesting.
And I feel like it was
You did a good
yacht.
job. This is so interesting, and I cannot wait to hear next week. If you're a new listener, Thank you for listening. I'm Sydney.
I'm Jess. This is Malpractice Podcast.
This has been an episode of Malpractice Podcast. Why don't you
Smash.
Why don't you go ahead and subscribe?
Smash.
Leave us a
Smash
review.
it.
Okay, in all realness though, those reviews, manna from heaven.
We
love
love it.
them.
Thank you.
They help us increase our
Self-esteem.
visual visibility, visuality. What was I
don't
about
know.
to say?
I said self-esteem.
They do help with my self-esteem, unless you're going to come at me for my speech patterns, and then I'll fight you. Thanks for listening.
Follow us on our social medias. If you want to hear something specific, send us a DM and we'll put it in the queue.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, tune in next week for part 2 of the tobacco saga, which is only 2 parts, so very short saga here.
I love it. I love a 2-part saga.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week for the sequel.
Toodles.
Bye.